At Christmas dinner, my father put down his fork, stared at me, and said, "You're a burden and you can't live here anymore." For a second, I thought I'd misunderstood. My mother let out a nervous laugh, not knowing if he was serious or not. But he kept looking at me, waiting for a reaction. The table fell silent. My younger sister, Lily, froze with her fork in the air, the food halfway to her mouth. Her eyes were wide, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. I swallowed the piece of ham I was still chewing and left my cutlery on the plate. "What?" I asked. "You heard me," he repeated directly. "You've been here long enough. You need to leave." I stood there, trying to process it. I was 23, I had a steady job, I could have left a long time ago. But I stayed because they needed me. I paid the electricity bill, the internet, the groceries, almost every week. My father had been unemployed for years, and my mother only worked part-time. If the lights were still on there, it was because of me. And now, all of a sudden, I was being treated like a nuisance. My mother tried to intervene. "Maybe we should talk about it later." But he cut her off. "No, Edie, this is my house. It's my rules, and I'm saying he has to leave." Lily put down her fork, her eyes going from one to the other, confused. She was only 16, and you could see that it scared her. If they could throw me out like that, what else could they do? I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. If that's what they wanted, fine. But they had no idea what they were asking for. I leaned back in my chair. "Okay," I said. My father settled into his chair as if he'd just won a contest. My mother remained there, uncomfortable, saying nothing. Maybe she was in shock, or maybe she just didn't care as much as I thought. I got up, picked up my plate, and took it to the sink. I wasn't going to give them the scene they were expecting. Instead, I looked at Lily, who was still sitting there, tense, confused. I made a subtle gesture with my head. She was the only one there who still mattered to me. My father took a sip of his drink, as if nothing had happened. My mother went back to stirring the mashed potatoes. Lily was still staring at me, wanting to say something but unable to. I didn't stay for dessert or any more conversation. I just left. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and started packing my things. If I was going to leave, then I would. But they weren't prepared for everything that meant. I didn't say anything about what I wouldn't be paying. I boxed everything up in silence, but I could hear the conversation downstairs. My mother's voice was low, hesitant. My father spoke firmly, as if he needed to convince her that it made sense. I heard a few loose phrases. "He's grown up now. We'll manage. I should have left a long time ago." An hour later, Lily knocked on my door. I opened it. She came in and closed it behind her. Her eyes were red. She was furious. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I'd like to know too," I replied as I put my laptop in my backpack. "But I'm leaving tomorrow," she shook her head. "This is absurd. You pay for everything. They can't even buy food without you." "It's not my problem anymore," I said. She bit her lip, holding back tears. "Where are you going?" "I'll manage." The truth was that I had some money saved up, but nothing prepared for a sudden departure. I was going to have to find a place quickly, maybe sleep at a friend's house for a few days. But I was going to be fine, not them. Lily hesitated. "I could..." She stopped. I knew what was coming. She wanted to come with me, but she was still in high school. "You know they'd never let me," I said. She looked away. I finished packing my things, and Lily was still standing there, as if she didn't want to leave the room. Finally, she let out a sigh. "They'll regret this." I smiled. "I know." The next morning, I left before anyone else woke up. I went downstairs with my suitcases, loaded everything into the car, and for a moment, looked at the house. I didn't feel sadness or anger, just relief. Before leaving the garage, I opened the bank app and went straight to the accounts. I removed my name from the electricity, water, and internet. Even Netflix was on my card. Without me, it would all stop working within weeks. I smiled, shifted into gear, and drove off without looking back. For the first few days, I stayed at my friend Jake's apartment. The sofa was hard, his dog Max would stare at me while I tried to sleep, and his roommate had the gift of being insufferable. He kept asking if I was going to live there forever. But none of that mattered. I was free. Free from paying for a house I didn't even want to be in. Free from pretending to respect a man who threw me out at Christmas. Free from being treated like an ATM with legs. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something just for me. 3 days later, my cell phone started ringing. I ignored it. 7 calls from my mother, 2 from my father, which, by the way, was very rare, and a few messages from Lily. I ignored them all. Until this one came. They're freaking out. The power's been cut. I couldn't hold back a smile. They really thought everything would sort itself out. Soon after, another message. Dad's furious. He says you did something to the house. Then, things were getting good. Over the next few days, I continued to ignore any attempt to contact her. My mother didn't stop. Calls, messages, even attempts to call me on social media. My father, on the other hand, called twice and disappeared. He must have been waiting for me to come back with my head down. Too bad for him. I stayed at Jake's apartment, who was a nice guy. The problem was his roommate, who loved to play the funny man. He made jokes, asked when I was going to disappear, and even complained about me using the kitchen. But I put up with it. It was temporary. While I got on with my life, it seemed that everything at home was sinking. Lily kept sending me updates, first the light, then the internet. The water took longer, but one day it stopped coming out of the tap. When that happened, my mother went into despair. She freaked out. She said she doesn't know how we're going to shower now. I had to laugh. They kicked me out, thinking they were getting rid of a problem. Now they were in the dark, with no water and no Netflix to pretend life was normal. And then came the icing on the cake. He's freaked out. He's breaking things in the living room. The image of my father screaming and destroying furniture because the miracle bills were no longer being paid by me was satisfying. He said he'd sort it out, but Mom's crying in her room. Of course he said that. He always pretended to be in control of everything. But now he wasn't in control of anything, and I wasn't going to be part of the solution. 2 weeks later, I got a place to call my own. Nothing fancy, but clean, functional, and most importantly, far away from that house. I took my savings and rented a small furnished apartment, decent sofa, good bed, and silence. On moving day, I received a message from Lily. I need to get out of here. I felt my heart squeeze. I knew she was in the middle of chaos. But she was still a minor. You know you can't, I replied. It took her a while to answer. When she did, it was direct. I know, but I can't take it anymore. And I understood. Nobody could stand living in that place. No electricity, no water, no internet. With screaming on one side and crying on the other. A complete hell. But their problem was no longer mine. I was at peace. A few nights later, the inevitable happened. It was late. I had just got out of the shower ready for bed. The phone rang. It was my mother. I rolled my eyes and ignored it. Minutes later, a message from Lily. Pick up. I sighed and, against my will, picked up. Before I could say anything, I heard my mother's voice. Desperate. Please come home. Couldn't help but let out a short laugh. I couldn't help a short laugh. We need you. I know your father was harsh, but he didn't mean it. He said exactly what he meant. I cut in dryly. You kicked me out. Now deal with it. On the other end of the line, I heard the muffled sound of sobs. We can't. The house is falling apart. It sounds like your problem, I replied, without changing my tone. She cried louder. Please. I know we made a mistake, but please. I could have felt sorry. But I didn't. Years of paying bills, carrying that place on my back, doing everything I could to help. And in the end, they treated me like I was nothing. Now they wanted me to come back. But I wasn't stupid. No, I wasn't. And I hung up before she could say anything else. I lay down on the bed and slept. For the first time in years, I really slept. Without anyone reminding me that I was only good for paying bills. In the days that followed, The calls continued. My mother begging, Lily asking for help. And my father? He never tried to call me again. Then, one day, Lily sent another message. He's talking about selling the house. That caught me off guard. As problematic as my father was, I never thought it would come to this. Selling? I replied. Yes, he said he couldn't do it anymore. Mom's freaked out, but he's decided. So, that was that. If he couldn't use someone as a support anymore, he'd just give up. I wanted to feel something, but all I got was contempt. I turned off my cell phone and let it go, but deep down, I knew this story wasn't over yet. I began to ignore any attempt to contact me. I blocked my mother. My father disappeared for good. Lily kept trying, but I needed distance. I needed to relearn how to live with myself. In my new apartment, things started to get back on track. Silence, peace, freedom. For the UI, first time, my money was mine. I was able to indulge in a few whims. Good food, new clothes, I even joined a gym. It was a new feeling, being able to spend on myself. Not on other people's survival, but of course, that wouldn't last long. 2 weeks later, I'd almost forgotten about the whole mess. And then a message arrived from an unknown number. I need to talk to you. It's serious. It was Lily. I sighed. I thought it would be another cry for help, more drama. But there was something strange there. What is it? I wrote. The answer came quickly. The house is going to be sold. Dad is already negotiating with a buyer. I laughed dryly. So? They're selling everything, even your things. I was silent for a few seconds. My stuff? Yes. Your computer, your TV, even your bed. He said that if you didn't want to come back, then you don't need any of it. I felt my blood run hot. An old anger rose up all at once like a punch in the gut. That miserable bastard had kicked me out, made me look worthless, and was now getting rid of my things as if I had never existed. I took a deep breath. Send me the buyer's address. It took Lily a few minutes, but she did. The man was interested in the whole house, and from the looks of it, everything inside. I grabbed my car keys and left without a second thought. The drive was short, but my head was pounding the whole way. When I arrived, there he was, a middle-aged man, standing in the garage, talking to my father as if everything was normal. I got out of the car and went straight over. Have you gone mad? I said, without raising my voice, but with fury in my voice. My father turned around in surprise. For a second, he seemed to hesitate, but then he was back to normal, with his usual cold stare. Oh, so now you're coming? There's anything here for you? The buyer looked from one to the other, uncomfortable. Is there a problem? I ignored the man. I approached my father. You have no right to sell my things. He laughed. Don't I? You didn't care about this house anymore. So you don't need anything that was in it. I paid for every single one of those things, I shouted. You're not selling anything that's mine. He shrugged. If you want, you can buy it back. That lit me up inside. I could have just let it go, walked away and got on with my life. But no, that man had thrown me out on the street after years of running the place. Now he wanted to profit from what I'd bought? No, this time he wasn't going to get away with it. Fine, I smiled. Sell the house. He arched an eyebrow. What? Sell it, I repeated. But once you've done that, you'll have nowhere else to live. He laughed. I'm going to buy an apartment. I smiled even more. With what money? He remained silent, and then he understood. He thought he was going to take the money from the sale and start life again somewhere else. But he had no idea what I had already done. Over the next few days, I used everything I knew to make sure he didn't see a penny. I contacted the energy company and told them about the sale. Any outstanding debts had to be paid off before the transfer. I did the same with the water and taxes. And there were a lot of arrears. The money he thought was going to fall into his account, evaporating. Almost all of it went straight to covering what he never paid. That alone would have been enough. But I went further. I remembered an important detail. The house wasn't just in his name. My mother was also entitled to it. and she didn't know anything about the sale. I called her. The first thing she said was, "Your husband is selling the house." Without telling you. Silence on the other end. A heavy silence. "What do you mean?" I explained. Every detail. "He can't do that. Can he?" "He can, if you let him." She remained silent. But I knew that, despite everything, my mother still had influence over him. The next day, I received a message from Lily. "They're fighting badly. My father tried to defend himself, but he had no more arguments. He couldn't sell the house without her consent. And without the money from the sale, he had no way out." That night, Lily called me. "You won't believe it. What's wrong?" "He's moving out." I leaned back on the sofa, satisfied. "Really?" "Yes. Mom said that if he wants to sell everything so badly, then he can leave on his own." I knew she wouldn't have the courage to do it on her own, but when she found out about the betrayal, it was enough to push her over the edge. No house. No money. No wife. My father had nowhere else to run. "Where is he going to live?" I asked. Lily laughed. "He's calling his friends, asking for a sofa to sleep on." I let out a laugh. It was poetic. For years, I'd been made to believe that I was the problem, a weight, a burden. But now, the only weight in the house was him. "You won," Lily said, still laughing. "I just did what I needed to do." "Do you want your things back?" I thought for a moment. "No, leave everything there. I'd already started a new life. I didn't need anything from that house. Not the things, nor the memories. The only thing I took with me was the certainty that I would never let anyone take advantage of me again." The months passed, and I moved on, quietly, without looking back. My small apartment became my refuge, my freedom. I never again had to pay bills that weren't mine. I never heard my father belittle me again. Never again did I feel that weight on my shoulders of carrying a family that never valued me. And for the first time in a long time, I was happy, supporting a house that was never really mine. Meanwhile, their lives were falling apart. Lily told me everything. After my mother threw my father out, he wandered from sofa to sofa, begging for shelter from friends who, one by one, drifted away. Nobody wanted to support a lazy middle-aged man who never did anything for anyone. No money, no job, without the house. He tried to sell under the table. He had finally tasted his own poison. And the most ironic thing? After a month of bouncing from place to place, unable to rent an apartment because of his bad name, unable to get a job because of his debts, he showed up at the house trying to get back in. Trying to convince my mother that they could start again. But this time, she didn't hesitate. She locked the door in his face. He screamed. He begged. He tried to convince her that without him she couldn't manage. But she was already managing. She started working longer hours. She learned to take care of her finances on her own. For the first time in years, she realized that she didn't need him for anything. And what about me? While he slept on borrowed sofas, while my mother took charge of her own life, I was living like never before. I started investing the money that had previously been swallowed up by bills that weren't even mine. I took courses. I learned to manage my own money. I grew in my career. And yes, I was promoted in that same job that my father had mocked, saying it would get me nowhere. Ironic, isn't it? It was exactly that job that had supported the household for so long, and now it was really supporting me. I traveled. I bought a decent car. I went out to see places I'd only seen from my computer window. No exaggerated luxury. But everything? Mine. And most importantly, peace. Silence. Freedom. No father complaining. No mother crying over bills. No constant tension in the air. Lily was the only one who stayed by my side, and I helped as much as I could. I encouraged her to study, to prepare, to leave home at the right time, so as not to fall into the same trap that held me back for so long. And our father? After my mother slammed the door in his face, he had nowhere else to fall. The last I heard was that he was living with a distant relative, someone who still didn't know who he really was. But I know how it ends. It always ends the same. Because he was always a burden, and sooner or later, everyone realizes that. The house I grew up in stayed with my mother. She paid off the debts, with a lot of effort, and moved on, without anyone to take everything from her. I never went back. There was no point. The boy who left that house on Christmas Eve, carrying suitcases and deleting his name from the accounts, never looked back. And no, he didn't regret it, because in the end, I won, and he lost everything.